All right, so we created a Surfer Dude character inside of the Mixamo version of Fuse, which is on Steam. This is a free version of Fuse that you can download on Steam. You have to get a Steam account, but it's free, and it is the original version. And if you use this version, the advantage is that there are a lot of characters available in this particular version. If we look at all the heads available, you can see there's quite a lot of characters. There is another version of Steam, which is because Adobe bought, or sorry, not of Steam, of Fuse. Adobe bought Fuse. So there is the Adobe version, which you can see here. It looks very similar, but there are less characters. The advantage of this version, which you would go to the Adobe site and download it, they call it a beta, but it's been a beta for a couple of years. And so you can just download it. However, you have to have the Adobe CC license to be able to open it. And the main advantage of this version of Fuse is that you have a send to Mixamo button that you don't have in the other version. And this send to Mixamo button bypasses some of the manual rigging process. It goes into Mixamo, it automatically rigs it, and it retains blend shapes. So you get about a bunch, like maybe 60 or so different facial blend shapes that you can use on the character. If you use this other version, even though you have more characters, you don't have that send to Mixamo button. You have to export, like we did in the last video, to a OBJ model and then import it into Mixamo for rigging and to put animation and motion capture clips on it. So if you can create it in the other version, if you have an account, that would be better because you would be able to have more expressive character with the facial blend shapes. Otherwise, you'd have to create those from scratch. There are ways to be able to import those other characters into this version. I have grad students doing that on some of their research projects, so we know that you can do that, and I might be able to show you that process later on. But for right now, choose a version of Fuse based on whether you have an Adobe CC account or not, and we exported it out. So I'm going to look at the file that we exported here, which is it's a folder that has an OBJ file, which is this one. It has the 3D cube on it, and it doesn't say MTL. And then it's got a bunch of texture maps, four for the body, a diffuse, gloss, normal, and specular texture for the body. And then you have the same thing for the clothes and other things that the character is wearing. And these are going to be something that we need to put on the character if it's going into Maya or if it's going into Unity. Now, to actually have these all go onto the character automatically, when you import it into Mixamo, you need to zip all of these files up. So you can see I already did that here. I created a surferdude2.zip file, and I just selected all of the different files, the 3D ones, the MTL one, and all the texture map files, and created a zip out of it. And so when you go over to Mixamo and you log in, now Mixamo.com is where you want to go. And if you don't have an account, you can create a free account there to be able to log in. And when you log in, you're going to come into the characters tab first, and you have all of these characters in here. And you can choose any one you want. Like if I click on this one and use this character, it's going to show me that character in its T-pose, and we could download it. And we would want to download it in the T-pose first. I want you to use custom characters that you bring in from Fuse for your project. So you're going to import those custom characters. If you want to use one of these other characters, like as a monster that it might be really difficult or time-consuming to create from scratch, there are other characters in here that I am okay if you use, as long as you customize them in some way after you download them from here. So if, for instance, you decide you want to use this weird looking monster character as the villain, and you're making a custom character from Fuse as your hero, or maybe a couple custom characters, and you want to use this one or other monster ones, that's fine. But I do want you, after you download this character or one of these other monster characters or other stock characters that are in here, I do want you to customize them as far as the texture maps go. You can open those up in Photoshop and you can customize them by painting on them, changing the colors, adding logos, giving them a different look. So I'm going to import my character now. So I'll go over to the right-hand side here and choose to upload a character. So if I click on Upload Character, it's going to give me this box, and you can see that it takes an FBX, an OBJ, or a zip file. FBX and OBJ, those are file formats that we can use in both Maya and Unity. And OBJ is what we exported out from the Steam version of Fuse. However, I zipped everything up when we did that export, and I'm going to use the zip file instead. And that will allow me to import the texture maps with the models. So I choose the zip file and open that, and it's going to take a minute or so or less for it to import all of those things. And once it's done, we should see our character in its T-pose with the texture maps on it. So if you don't do this, if you just choose an OBJ file, it's going to come in as a grayscale character without any textures on it. And that's fine. I mean, you could still download, you could still rig it and get some animations for it and download it. And then you could put the texture maps on it inside of Maya or inside of Unity. Like you can just connect all those up into whatever shader you're going to use. And you might have to do that anyway when you import the character into one of those programs. But this process just allows us to see the character with its textures and the animation that we're going to put on it inside of Mixamo. So here we are. We have the character, and it looks good. Looks like it did in Fuse. So we're going to go ahead and go to Next. And we want to, because this is an OBJ, it didn't do the rigging automatically. So we have to actually place these. This chin one here, you want to place where you think the head would rotate from. And if you kind of look at it, it's kind of at the base of the back of your head, right where if you go forward, it's going to be right where the mouth is. And so place that there, and then the wrists, we want it right in the middle of the wrist. You get a little zoomed in view there so you can kind of see where that's going to go. I would say since he's got a sleeve, I'd probably want it right where the edge of the sleeve is. We've got elbows right here, which we'll put right in the middle of the arm where we think the elbow might be. I think it's probably right about there. And then I want the knees, and I would say probably that's right around where that pant leg is going to start. And then we have this one here for the center of the body, right in the center of the hips. And so I'm going to put that right there, kind of where his jacket ends. And so you can see it automatically did some symmetry because use symmetry is turned on the bottom. And we've got a standard skeleton of 65 different joints. There's a lot of joints because there's 3 joints for every finger. And so that's going to be 20 times 3, 30 joints right there, right? So, and then the rest of the ones in the body. There's other choices in here, but I would go ahead and use the 65 and then go to next. And it's going to do the rigging process. It's going to create the joints based on where you placed your main pivots, and then it's going to bind it to the model or the skin so that it will deform. And when it comes up, you're going to get the character in a sort of standard idle type of animation. And you'll get to see then whether you put your pivot points in the right place and if it looks like it's animating well. And if it isn't, you could always do the import process again, discard this character, import it again, and move those pivot points somewhere else. So it really depends on how complex the character is, how long this process is going to take. And there we have it. So he looks like he's animating pretty well. The hands, the fingers are moving. I think I might have went overboard on his suntan a little bit. He looks a little dark as far as his skin goes, but the lighting isn't very good here, so that I'd probably want to see that inside of Maya or Unity to see if that really is as dark as it looks. I could always go into the texture map and adjust it in Photoshop a little bit, but I could go back to Fuse and make the changes there and export it again. All right, I like what I see here, so I'm going to go to next. And then it's asked me, do I want to proceed with this character? Yes, I do. And then it's going to bring it in its T-pose. And I'll go ahead. At this point, I definitely want to download it with the T-pose. So you click the download button. And you have several choices. If you're going to Unity, you want to use that one. If you're going to Maya, I would say you want to use this one here. And then you want the T-pose for the starting of your character. Especially if you're going to Unity or Maya, you need the T-pose in order to do certain things with the character in those programs. So in Maya, for instance, if you want to create a character with that using the human IK inside of Maya, it needs to be in its T-pose to do that. So definitely download this. In its T-pose. And it depends on the file or the character, how complicated it is, how big the file is going to be. It looks like this one's about 22 megabytes that it's downloading, and it's already done. So if I want to have animation for this character in Maya or Unity, you want to download the animations on the character. Like you don't want to download them on one of these other characters and put them on this character. There is a way to retarget animation from different characters like that, but it's more complicated when you choose animations in here. So if I go to animations, and let's say I would like an idle animation. So I'm going to search idle. And probably, you know, for most animations and games as well, you're going to probably want to start with an idle. And so let's say I have a couple of characters and they're gonna race. This is a surfer, and they're gonna race to their surfboards, or they're gonna something like that. Maybe it's a triathlon or something. So I'd want to look for an idle that's going to be a good way to start, like at a race. So like this one right here, where he's kind of kicking the dirt and he looks like he's getting ready. That would be a good one for me to use. And so when you put that, when you choose one of these animations, it's retargeting it to this character automatically here in Mixamo. Because you can see that's not the character that it was originally on. And so it's doing all that for you, and it looks good. And you can look at it from different angles. You can adjust some things on it over here on the right-hand side. You can increase the arm spacing. Like if I pull this out, his arms are actually going to be a little wider. You know, and if I pull it in, his arms are going to be a little closer. But you want to be careful, like you don't intersect his body like that one's doing right there. So I'm going to pull him back out a little bit again. And the more they are out, the more it looks like he's getting ready for something. And you can trim the animation. You can see there's some actual extra animation on the ends of this that they're not even using here. But I'm not going to bother with that. Overdrive is it's going to make it faster or slower. I like the speed of it right now. I'll probably leave it where it is. If I move it to the right, it's going to be faster. And if I move it to the left, it's going to be slower. So I'm going to leave it right about in the middle, which was 50. And then what I want to do is I want to download that animation for this character. And I'm only going to use this animation for this character. Again, I could retarget it to another character, but that's more involved. And I'll show you how to do that later. But to begin with, choose your animations for your character and download them while you have your character in here, what you think you might use. So I'm going to download this one, and I want to do an FBX file. Again, depends where you're going. I'm just going to do standard FBX because that's what I did with the other character, the T-pose character. And you want to choose what frames per second you're going to use. 30 frames per second is a standard for like video. 60 frames is got a lot more frames per second, so there's going to be more data there. If you are doing something in Maya or Unity, and you're concerned about file size, 24 frames per second is going to look good, usually. It's film speed. but it's going to have less frames per second, so it's going to be a smaller file size. And these files are not going to be that big when you take the skin off, because right now I have with skin. I will actually want to do this one without skin. And the reason you want to do it without skin is because I already downloaded the skin in the T-pose that I downloaded. And I don't need to have the skin for every single animation for this character. I only need the skin once, and that's on the T-pose. And for all the other ones, I just need the animation data. So these are going to be fairly small file sizes, but if you're doing a lot of animation, it still could add up. Less frames per second is going to be a smaller file. And it's also when we get, if you're doing this in Maya and we're rendering out an animation, less frames per second is going to mean less rendered frames, and therefore will take less time for you to render your final animation. And 24 frames per second is going to look good because that's film speed. So I would stick with 24 frames per second for Maya rendering. So I'll go ahead and download this. And that's going to go into my downloads folder. And then I'd want to choose some other things. If this was a race or something, I might search run, for instance. And if it's a race, I probably want to find something that looks like he's running fast. This one here probably isn't appropriate. You can do it in place so that you can see what it's looking like, but that's a pretty intense run. It looks like more like he's going to attack somebody. A race one probably would be more like this one right here. Now this one doesn't actually have an in-place feature, so I might actually have to try to, I could stop it, zoom out a little bit, and then play it. And you can see that that's that particular run. And I think that looks pretty good. But again, try different ones out. That looks like he's just tired. But maybe, maybe he is tired. There's a running backwards one. There's some jumping ones, which are kind of interesting. Here's a fast run. That looks like a run that you would do in a race. So I'm going to go with that one. It is a loop, so I can repeat it. It should repeat seamlessly. And I'll go ahead and download that. And once you set up your settings the first time, you can go ahead then and leave them because it's gonna remember it without skin, 24 frames per second. I'm not using keyframe reduction, which it's going to give me the all the keyframes with this, and I think that's fine for what I'm downloading it for. So I'm going to go ahead and download that. Okay, so I've got a couple of animations. You'd want to download at least probably 4 or 5 different animations for a sequence that you want to put together inside of Maya or Unity, depending on what you're going to use it in. And then you would mix them together in those programs. So figure out your sequences and then download all the ones that you think you might use. And if I go out and look at these now, so those are going into my downloads folder. Let's just go and click here and look at my downloads folder. Here they are. I'll go ahead and shift select those and bring them over to where I would use them. So I probably use them, or a good place to put them would be where my texture maps are. So I have all those in the same place. I'll just we'll just copy and paste them. So now you can see that they're in here, and the ones that I want to use are these three. So if you take a look at these files, let's just look at them and their details. Yeah, it's a little hard to tell the difference between this 3D object file and this one, but you can tell by the file size which one is which. So and you know, we could just make a separate animations new folder, and we'll do surfer dude 2 underscore anims, and we'll place those in there. But I know that the difference between these two surfer dude 2s, they're actually two different file formats. Otherwise it would have asked me to overwrite it. One's an OBJ and the other one is an FBX. The FBX actually has all the texture maps in it, and that's why it's 23 megabytes, and the other one is only 2 megabytes. So that's the difference, is it added in all the texture maps to the FBX file. And the other two, the animation files, the idle and the fast run, you can see that they're not even 1 megabyte. They're very, very small files. So I'll go ahead and take those three and we'll put it into this folder so that we don't get them confused. And then we should go in and open that up in Maya to just check the texture maps and see what they look like. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and go to Maya, and you should create a new project for this animation or for this character, and so I'm going to go to my project window, and we'll go ahead and you can see I have one in here, but I'm going to make another one for the video here. I'll go ahead and call it, let's call this Surfer Dude Animation. And I'll go ahead and put it on the desktop. You can put it in your course folder if you want, but somewhere where you can find it, and you can choose here if it's going someplace weird, and choose your desktop. And then it's going to create all of those folders that Maya needs to create the project file. And then of course you want to go to set the project afterwards and choose that on your desktop. Find the Surfer Dude animation and set it. Now, probably if I'm going to use this animation and all of this stuff in that new project, I would want to go find that project on my desktop and copy these into the folders of that project. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just minimize all of these, and I'll go to the Surfer Dude project here. Here's my project folder that was created on my desktop. It created all these folders, and normally I would put the FBX files and the animation files in this particular folder, which is called Assets. So I'm going to go to the Surfer Dude one and take this whole Surfer Dude 2 folder, and I'm going to bring that over and put it in this Assets folder. So now it's got all of these in there. And if you want to, we could also, this is just going to make it easier to access these different files. We do have all these texture maps here. I can copy those and bring those over, or you can just move them, whatever you want. But move those over to source images, because that's where it looks for the texture maps and where it opens the texture maps. So if I paste those over there, it's going to automatically open to those if I'm working with those files. So let's go ahead and import these into Maya. So I'm going to go back to Maya now. And we'll go ahead and import it in. So I'm going to go to File, and I want to import this in as an FBX. So when you go to File, Import, you're going to want to choose FBX out of the list of different things. Don't use best guess usually. I mean, you can try it, but I like to, if I know it's an FBX file that's coming in, I will choose FBX. And if you don't have FBX in your list, then you're going to have to go and find your settings preferences and go to your plugin manager. And you're going to have to go search FBX and find it, FBX Maya, and load them up and have them auto load. So check those boxes. So when you're doing it, excuse me, FBX import, you're going to want to probably go to edit your preset. And I want to bring in animation. Make sure you have animation turned on. I'm going to use a lot of the default options here. You could turn some of these on depending if you have baked animation and if you want to fill the timeline. I think I'm just going to leave these at their defaults and go down until I find advanced options and open it up to units and find scale factor. Scale factor is going to allow you to set the size of the character when it comes in. And usually by default, it's on automatic. Just from experience, I know that these characters tend to come in rather large. And so if you turn that off, you can choose what scale factor you want to use, and you might have to try a couple of imports until you find one that you like. But I kind of like feet because the character will come in and it won't be gigantic and it won't be teeny tiny. It'll be a medium scale inside of Maya. And that does make a difference with how big the cameras and lights and other things are inside of the interface. So if your character's too big, they'll be really small. And if the character's too small, they'll be really big. It's better to have a medium-sized character. So I'm going to go ahead and save that preset. Or actually, I don't need to save it. I could save it. Just close it. It'll remember it. And if you want to save it, you can give it a name and save it. But I'm just closing it and hitting import. So when you import it, you want to look into your assets folder where you have it. Go into your, if you put it in a folder there, like I have Surfer Dude 2, Anims, and I can see there's the 22 megabyte file, which is the T-pose. I probably should have put the name T-pose on there. I've just got Surfer Dude 2. That's fine. I know it's the T-pose. And you can check your options again over here if you want to, but I can see that they're still the way I set them. I still have scale factor of feet, and I'm going to go ahead and import it. And here's the character. And you can see that it's not teeny tiny. Teeny tiny would be if it's like smaller than one of these grid spaces, and gigantic would be that I can hardly even see the grid, right? It's somewhere in the middle, and you can try different things if you want. This is a little annoying that I get this large, basically it's a joint on the skeleton, but we can adjust that. It's not a big deal. If you go in and you go to your shade and you put X-ray joints on, you can see the skeleton is in there. I'm not seeing the texture maps, but I don't have texture map turned on, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it on the window, and I can see that the texture maps are there. I'm going to turn, since mainly what I want to do right now is just check the textures and see what they look like, I'm going to turn my X-ray joints off. And then I can zoom in a little bit with my wheel, and I'll hold Alt down and I'll drag with my middle mouse button so I can see how the textures look. And you can see they look pretty good. They came in and it looks pretty much the way it looked inside of the Fuse software, and I know everything is kind of working correctly. Now, if you want to check those, you could select something like your body here and go ahead and look at your attribute editor, Window, General Editor's attribute editor, and your attribute editor might be over here. It might be docked in your below your channel box. If not, you can open it this way and you can go and check. And you can see that I have some packed materials here. And that's actually where the texture maps are. And I can see that it's using a Phong. And the color channel is being set to the diffuse.ping for packed 0, and that was the body texture. And if we go back to it again, you can see that it's got also the bump map. The normal map is being plugged into the bump map channel. And we can see down here that the specular color is automatically getting plugged in as well, as is the cosine power. So all of these different, this is a specular map. And this is the gloss map. So all 4 texture maps automatically got plugged in to this. And they look good. So they look appropriate to what the character should look like. All right, so import your characters in, check them out in their T-pose, and next what we are going to do in the next video will be to actually bring in those animations and start mixing them together here inside of Maya. So we will have to use Human IK and create a character out of this, and then add all the animations in there. So we'll do that next time and get all your characters made and check out their textures inside of Maya. Okay, thank you.